Yes, sir.
Right. So, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to welcome our principal, Dr. Manoj Sinha, for gracing us on this occasion. And today we are, this is a continuation of our webinar series. And today's Ms. Soshomi is going to talk about psychological restoration. I would request our principal to say a few words to our audience and our speaker to motivate us. Sir.
Okay. Thank you, Haley. I'm glad that Soshomi today is the resource person and on a topic which I could use myself also. I mean, like, psychological restoration. It almost sounds, and I don't know anything about it, tell you frankly, academically otherwise. But from the title itself, it seems something I can use. Psychological restoration is something that seems to me as a layman that we all from time to time keep needing. So good afternoon now. I mean, it's not a good morning anymore. It seems like one. Good afternoon, Dr. Dwivedi. Thank you for inviting me. All colleagues from Psychology Department. Good to see you all. It's a pleasure, especially in an academic exercise where some of our students and faculty, everybody will be interacting and gaining their own. And the university, as you know, is trying to deal with the session and everything in this new post-corona phase. Everybody is grappling with it. So webinars have become a way of keeping in touch, keeping in at par with the academic courses that we have delivered through this term. And I hope some of your students are gaining out of all these online interactions that we are keeping from time to time. I would encourage you to go ahead with it, keep a little more also of this after today. I mean, I believe that the present series is ending today. You have had 3 talks, including today. I mean, today is the 3rd one in this series. So after that, you should also have 1 or 2 more of them so that our students feel engaged, they keep engaged with with us from time to time. It also gives them a chance to interact with you some other way. Though I'm sure that individually each of you teachers are keeping up with the students. So this morning, since I don't know much about psychological restoration, so I'll keep quiet and let Soshomi take over from here. But the psychological aspects of the present situation, how important they are, has come forth to me in many ways since the pandemic struck the larger world, globe, and also India, in the sense that every committee I interact in or interact with, either in UGC or at the university level or even at our college level, various times we are talking about, mental health somehow keeps coming back. Mental health, the psychological aspects of this corona and pandemic, it keeps coming back in discussion, and people are either getting depressed or getting, some way affected psychologically. For example, if you ask me right now, even I don't know how I have been affected. Okay, but some of you might be able to guess through my behavior, the way I talk or things like that. You are the experts in psychology, so you'll be able to guess, that there are some problems that we may have developed. 2.5 months of inactivity after my life of 5 years of so much of activity, trying to build the college in every way. It's not easy to handle. Okay, these days, if you ask me how to wash a utensil, I know better than how to, make an interview or schedule a GB meeting and all that. So life for each of one has changed in many ways. It's not the simple chores that we take up or anything, but the very outlook to life has changed, and so each one of us will have to reinvent, not only physically. Physically, yes, we can wear a mask or a globe. Right now, after I leave your meeting, I'll be immediately putting on a globe and all that, and everything. And so physically, life may have changed, but mentally, how it is changing is going to be very important. And I look forward to all of you to when we start to have that graded reopening and sometimes the faculty will start, non-teaching has started coming to the college already, as you know. When the teachers start to come, when the students start to come back to us, how we are supposed to handle them graded in a graded reopening, that will be a challenge that you will have to all do. So all the best, Soshomi. Have a very nice interaction, and may you all have a very good lecture from Soshomi today. All the best for today. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. And sir, you'll be glad to know that we are now moving forward with the webinar. In the next series, we are getting external resources. So we will be addressing the students in a few days.
Through that, I look forward to being invited. I'll be with you.
Definitely, sir. Right.
And I'll be there around this also right now. I'll be doing some work back here. Okay. And I'll be together with you. So when the question answers start, I'll rejoin you over there. All right.
Absolutely, sir.
Actively.
Right, sir. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha, for your very good speech, sir. And the members of the Department of Psychology are always there in case of psychological stress and strain. And it was quite nice to hear you once again. You appear to be bubbling with energy rather than suffering from psychological problems. Nothing like that.
You are the only non-psychology person there, and you are saying it, Dr. Dwivedi. So I'll have to believe what the others are saying. Our young colleagues, if they tell me that I'm all right, I'll believe them. But everyone except you. Thank you.
Now I'm introducing Dr. Soshomi over here. She has done MPhil from University of Delhi. She is a trained clinical psychologist, and she did her training from Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences. She is in fact doing psychological restoration.
Okay, I think we lost sir. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think he'll come back in a while, hopefully. So I'll take over for now. Okay. Yeah, hello everyone. And welcome to today's webinar series, the third day and the last one for the 3 days webinar that the psychology department organized. I hope I'm audible. Yeah, right. Okay. Yes. So psychological restoration by Ms. Soshomi Makang. And my name is Ching, and I will be your moderator for today. And I am excited to be a part of today's event. And before we start with the event, I would like to invite all of you. Okay, Dwivedi sir is here. All right, just one moment. I would like to invite anyone who would like to ask the question to please drop in the question in the chat box privately to me, all right, so that we can refer to them after the session end. And also, if at all during the session there is a disconnection or the session gets interrupted because of the time limit, which is obviously going to happen, I would like to request all of you to kindly join again using the same link, right? Okay. And is Dwivedi sir here?
No, not yet. I think he will join in. We can start the session.
No, I have rejoined now.
Okay. Yeah.
So I am requesting Dr. Ching to take over and please moderate, and
right.
Dr. Soshomi to start. Yes.
All right. So before we start, before we allow Soshomi ma'am to speak, I would like to have a small introduction. It's such a pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Soshomi Makang. Ms. Soshomi is a licensed clinical psychologist, and she teaches psychology to undergraduate students here in our college, Aryabhatta College. Those of you who knows her know for a fact that she is highly driven and her desire by her desire to help others, and it is both a beautiful and amazing process when both the things that you want to do and the things that you have to do comes together to you in the form of a career or a vacation in life. And that is something that is very much evident in Soshomi. She is also a clinical psychologist and an educator at the same time, and an initiator when it comes to giving help to someone like the students or anyone that she thinks who needs help, right? So without much further ado, let me welcome and hand over the session to Ms. Soshomi Makang.
अभी तो ये लॉकडाउन की वजह से ये संभव
Yes, Soshomi. Soshomi, please unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm going to share the screen first and I'll proceed. Okay, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Principal Sir. Thank you, Devedi Sir, and also the department. And you have always been, Principal Sir and Devedi Sir, you have always been the motivator for me, and also always giving us a chance to experiment with our ideas, and also sharing what we know about the discipline that we are into. And also, Jing, thank you so much for the kind words. And also, thank you so much, dear students and colleagues who are here today, and also those who have joined in for this particular session. Right. So today, this is the topic that I'm going to talk about. It is something that it is a new area, or maybe it is my first presentation of my consolidation of different topics that is related, or that I feel that this is necessary for the current situation, right? So thank you again, that this is very much important for me to build up my courage and also my knowledge, the validity of my knowledge, right? And I can test and experiment with my ideas. Thank you so much. And let's start the topic. And today the topic is psychological restoration. And I'm so glad that from the beginning of the webinar, we have been we have been quite successful in keeping the same track in terms of the topic and also in terms of the areas that has been covered. And today I will also be doing the same, as in I will be extending a little bit, right? So that this webinar becomes a compact. So when we say psychological restoration, let us understand what is restoration. Restoration is that what happens to us regularly, right? So we restore ourselves from a relationship. We restore ourselves when after a burst of anger, right? We restore ourselves when we are after we experience illness. We restore when we experience trauma, even addiction, even loss and frustration. Even we restore relationship, and we restore relationship with nature also, right? So in human history, we know that there are a lot of stories and that never dies. And that story, the theme of the story is about restoration, right? So one of the stories that I always remember is the story of the prodigal son. This is the story of restoration, right? And this kind of a story, it keeps us psychologically driven, right? And for example, like many of us, we're aware about the superheroes, like the Avengers and the heroes that we see in the comics. All of these, they bring restoration, right? So this particular phenomena of bringing back, we can find within ourselves, we can find within in the connection that we have with others, and also we can find this connection, or we can find this restoration with relationship with the terrestrial aspect, which is the earth and nature. And also we restore ourselves in the metaphysical realm. Also we restore relationship with God, right? So but let's narrow it down to what is psychological restoration. So within the psychological realm, it is a process of uncovering, or process of renewing our physical, our psychological, and also social resources or capabilities that has been diminished while we were trying to cope with the adaptive demands, while we were trying to meet the daily needs, right? So there are certain resources. It means that there are resources which is inherent in an individual, but that resources, it lies dormant, and it lies dormant because we could not find we could not find it because we are already bounded with regimens. We are already bounded with routines to be executed every day as as a man, or as a man, and as a man who is defined as a qualified man, if a person is able to optimize, to extract, and even to be productive, right? So certain in that definition of man, we tend to lose this restorative, we tend to underlook these restorative elements, right? Because we have a different notion, we have a definition of a man, and that is that a man should be productive, a man should know how to optimize, or a man should always know how to extract from the environment around, right? So in that process, we build our routines, we build our regimens. So in that process, we tend to lose the other inherent potentials that we have, right? So we're going to look into this process, right? As in how there are different processes that can be restorative, and that restorative part, how we can unlock at this point of time, or at this point of crisis, right? So in the literature, we will find that this psychological restoration concept, it has been used in 3 areas of study, mostly when the environmental psychology, right? Therapy, the concept is highly used, and also the third area where we can apply, or where restoration principle is dominant, it is the brain function, right? So we'll go by this. Okay, so so the first area where we can locate this concept of restoration is relating to our brain. So let us see how we are made up of, right? So at this particular point, we have to dissect what are we made up of? What are the functions that made up individual, and what are the mechanisms behind the emotions, the cognitions, and the coping strategies that we have? And one way to see this is looking at the brain level, right? So we know that our brains are capable of different things. Our brains are capable of forming habits, and also we are driven. Your personality is driven by, it is made up of habits, right? So scientists and researchers found that 40% of your behavior, it is driven by habits. 40%, right? So what is this habits made of? It is made up of certain pattern of brain wiring. Okay, so what do you call it? Like, it means that the reward system and the reinforcement pathway, okay, the connection between these two, the event and the secretion of certain chemicals, the association between these two, it has formed the habit, right? So what we can see is that, yes, we have a habit. Before the lockdown, we used to have a habit, and this and in this particular, yes, and the kind of the habit that we used to have, it is no longer fitting to the situation. The fact is that means I have a list of a habit, and that particular habit which gives me high gratification, it is no longer effective in this lockdown, right? Because we are now bounded by different environment. We are now living in a more restrictive environment, and the reward zone, or the place where we used to go and get our reward, it is defunct. That means, like, for example, you used to go and hang out in certain Niketan, and now it's no longer possible. That means we are forced to find an alternative, to find an alternative for a reward. That means, it means what? It means that we need to rewire our brain, right? Rewire our brain. We need to change our brain mechanism. We need to build up a new habits that will substitute what we used to, yes, that will substitute our old behavior, that will substitute our old habit. Because if you see, you feel like you don't want to do anything because the behavior that you used to do, you're not able to do it, right? And it will have a different consequence. You feel demoralized, which we will come later, right? So since the association between the reward system and how the reward system and the behavior that you indulge into, okay, it is so strong, we are finding it very difficult to move away from that habit, right? So right? So, and we know that since 40% of what we actually do, they are habits, and our behavior becomes very automatic, and it becomes very kind of economical, right? And and it's very easy to follow the habit, right? Because our brain will not go and look for an extra, or it will not go to the extent of expanding extra energy to form a new habit, right? So the reason here is that since this is the kind of the structure that we have, this is the kind of the function that is very innate with us. We need to know how do brain functions, so that we will know as in what are the advantages that it will help us. What are the advantages, or what are the points where we can target, and where it can act as a restorative factor, right? So and very important finding that changed our attitude towards how brain can be, or how learning can happen, right? Apart from the habit, how learning can happen is the neuroplasticity research, right? So neuroplasticity is the capability of the brain to form new connections. And this idea, or this scientific findings, it revolutionizes how we view aging, right? So we used to believe that aging, it is a fast pace of entropy, or it is the dying of the connections, right? But then this neuroplasticity idea, or this neuroplasticity function of the brain, it changed our attitude, and it says that yes, learning can happen even at the, even a person crosses 80 or 90, but yes, it can happen, but the condition is that it will happen at a slower rate. So it means that our brain is something that will always keep on growing until we feed with new and new informations, right? So this is the organ, this is the function that we have, right? If you have a brain, that means you have this function. Even if I have a brain, I have this function, right? So knowing that our brain functions like this, right? That means it's not only the habit, but also it also has the capacity to change, to learn new experiences. And using this to our advantage, it can be very restorative for us. So the task, yeah, so it is the capacity that we want to restore, right? So this plasticity that we have, that our brain is capable of, this is what we wanted to restore, right? And we have to know that, let's bring back to the context, as in, why do we need to restore, right? Why the behaviors that I used to do, it was so adaptive. It used to give me a lot of satisfaction. It used to give me a lot of gratification. Even the habits that I used to have, it gratifies my needs. I was able to achieve the goal, right? But we have to understand also, as in, why we are in this state, why we are in such a restrictive state of living. Why it is? Because the problem that we're facing, it is the current crisis, it is the culmination of bad habits, okay, that has been practiced collectively by humans for a very long period of time, right? And that has been practiced in a very extensive way, right? So so if this is the habit, that means if you break it down, and that is typically of a psychology, to break down the behavior, to dissect it into most anatomical level, right? So this is what we are doing, as in, the reason why we're in a crisis, why we are in a crisis with the nature, it is because we have been collectively practicing very bad habits about how to consume the nature and how to interact with the nature. This is what is happening, right? So, and our behavior, the habits that we have, okay, it is, we can put it into more like into the category of an exploitative behavior, right? Or at the same time, the habit of distinguishing people on the basis of the social status, right? So if more and more people have this kind of a habit, we can see that even this kind of a bad habit, it is also somehow, it is manifested in a larger institutional manner. Like, for example, how people are treated how different categories of people are treated in this current situation, right? So the way we treat with people, this is the culminations of all the habits. This is the culminations of our past learning, right? So it can be directly linked to how our brain is capable of that. Since our brain doesn't have a moral radar, our intellectual capacity, which is responsible by the frontal lobe, right? This is the most advanced or the most sophisticated part of the brain. This acts as a moral radar. So at this point of time, we have to know, as in, what are we made up of? And knowing what we are made up of, it will have a restorative impact on us, right? So that is one area where we can have a restorative influence. And the second area is the environmental restoration. I'm not able to change the screen. Can I please stop for 1 minute and so that I can check? Yes. Okay, so coming to the second area where psychological restoration is applied is the environmental restoration, right? So there is a condition called nature deficit theory, which was given by Richard Louv, right? And this is a clinically recognized condition and which is characterized by a loss of communion with other living things, right? And this is observed when among children who spend major amount of the time indoor, okay, and spending a major amount of their time indoors, it makes them feel alienated from nature, and it makes them more vulnerable to negative moods and also reduce the attention span, right? So with this kind of a condition, okay, it becomes imperative, as in why we should not why we should have a connection with nature, and why we should not make nature something very remote to us, right? So we know that we evolve within the nature, right? And nature has always been a part of us, right? And also we know that the brain that we inherit, it is not something new. The brain that inherit, the primitive brain, it has been shaped again and again by environment, okay? And also the environment and also the genes where our ancestors were exposed to, right? So it's not totally, you are not, in one way we can say that we are not totally a new person. There is always some kind of information. There is always some kind of a genetic information. There's always kind of an experiences which is lying in your DNA, and that is responsible for how we behave in this current situation, right? So looking into that, that means we naturally, we human beings, we can be protected by nature, okay? And how can we be protected? Because nature has the facility to give us physiological, emotional, and attention restoration. Nature has this capacity, right? And it allows us to have a renewal of the personal resources to serve the, or to meet the daily demands, right? So we can see that some of the environment, it is more adaptive. It gives us a vibe of renewal. Like for example, if you go to museum, okay, if you go to park, right, rather than if you go to a market, which one do you find it gives you renewal vibe? That means we feel more rejuvenated when we go to a place where it is calm, okay, where you see more green vegetations, okay, and when you see more when you see more nature kind of a stimulus, right? Nature related stimulus, right? So this notion that yes, nature can be very much protective for us, and recovering these protective factors, this can be also restoration for us, right? So with this notion that nature is a protective factor, it can be is based on few theories, like two theories. The first theory is the attention fatigue, cognitive attention fatigue theory. This is a cognitive theory, right? And it says that exposure to nature can restore ourselves from attention fatigue, right? And attention fatigue is something which all of us, we're not strange to. All of us, we experience attention fatigue. This is a very common phenomena, right? And this is the attention fatigue. It is the ingredient that will lead us to burnout at the end, right? So it is a common phenomena of inability to sustain attention for a long period of time, and that results from directed attention to maintain our focus. But the problem here is that in that process, we inhibit other things. We focus so much, but in that process, we inhibit other things, right? So basically, attention fatigue is, we're talking about the cognitive inflexibility, right? So to understand this more, I think let's run through a small experience, right? And I want you to be a part of this. I'm sharing the screen. This is an image of a natural landscape, right? So just look around, just look into the image, and you will see the colors, the contours, right? And also, this is the image of a very of an urban setting, okay, maybe one of the developing countries, right? And then you make a comparison of these two. So the first image and the second image. So it has been found that the first image, okay, of the natural landscape, okay, this offers this, after exposing to this, we can sustain our attention longer. And if we look into this image, you will see that there is a room for imagination, right? There's a room for imagination if we look into this first image. And also it encourages us for mental extension, right? So for example, just look at this image, and some of you might be even going there in the, in the lake, and maybe even, trying to get into the water. That kind of imagination, that kind of mental extension is offered. And having that, it is very restorative for us. That is something very calming for us, right? But if you look into the image, the other image, it is very complex. It is very complex, and you will not be able to see, or you will easily get fed up with this picture, right? So that is the kind of the stimulus that we are surrounded with. We are surrounded with very complex pictures. And if we live in an urban setting, then every day, now and then, we are surrounded by these visuals, right? But on the other hand, it is a different scenario, okay? On the other hand, it gives us so much of space for imagination, even space for mental extension, right? So, yes. So coming to the next, this is an exercise, and I want you to join me in this, right? So this particular test, we call it the trail making test. So in this test, we have to draw the line starting from 1, okay? So you draw the line starting from 1, and you go to 2, okay? And after that, join the line from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and until it reaches 23, okay? So like until it reaches 24, right? And you have to take the time, you have to record the time taken, okay? So this is the first task of this test. And the second task is this. This is the same, but there is an additional rule to this test, okay? So here we have to start with 1, and then you go to B, you go to A, and then from A you have to join the line to 2, 2 to B, okay, B to 3, and until it reaches the maximum, okay, like 12 and maybe KL, okay? So that's what it is. This is a test. So what happened here is that you can appreciate that you are slowing down as you go to the second task. You are slowing down when you are trying to join the line. We are slowing down when we are doing the test, the task B, okay? Because we have to switch back and forth between the different sets of rules, like starting from number and then letter to number again, okay? So the differences to complete these 2 tasks, okay, it is to compare the switching cost, as in how much of time or energy you invest in switching the task, in switching from numbers to symbols and symbols to number again, right? So and this test demonstrated that if you are attentionally, if you're fatigued, okay, if you have an attention fatigue, that means you are going to take longer period of time to complete task B, because it requires more. It has more rules, and it requires cognitive flexibility, okay? So having this kind of a task, okay, having this kind of a task and having this kind of a test administered to many participants, okay, and the meta-analysis has found that those who looked at the natural environment, or those who took a walk in the natural environment, okay, in an experiment, they have performed better on trail making task B, okay, than those who have been randomly assigned to other comparison group, typically those who were exposed to urban setting, okay? So we can see that this differences in the performances, it reflects one thing. What does it reflect? It means the cognitive flexibility, it is lesser. There is, yes, those who are exposed to nature, they are cognitively more flexible as compared to those who are not exposed to the natural environment, right? So, so it means that if we don't have this cognitive flexibility, if we are in a setting where there is no cognitive, it does not allow for cognitive flexibility, then what? Then we are bound to experience attention fatigue. If you don't have cognitive flexibility, your life will be boring, okay? You'll find yourself boring, okay? And life will be monotonous, and you will be interested by very limited things in life, right? And we will be even driven to do things, but in a very limited manner, right? So this is what nature can do to us, as in we can be more cognitively flexible if we are exposed to nature, something that nature, because yes, because it gives us a lot of space for imagination and it gives us space for mental extension, right? So this particular finding, this cognitive flexibility, okay, associated with nature, it has been very successfully used in rehabilitation and in treatment of many illnesses, many illnesses, especially mental illness, okay, like depression, right? So we see that some of the illnesses, it is caused by the radical mutation of environment, okay? And this has lead to a lot of epidemic, right? Like lifestyle related kind of a disease, and also one of the most common or notorious illness like depression, right? So cognitive flexibility, okay, we can restore this if we have something that is very, if we are surrounded by something that is very natural, that we are very psycho-evolutionary, very much prepared to or driven to, okay? And the second theory is the stress reduction theory. So in stress reduction theory, we are, this is given, this is a theory given by Roger Ulrich. He proposed that, you know, people restore from psychophysiological stress, and the reason why we are driven to restorative places, it is because of the need to have a psychological, physiological calmness, need to regain the conservative state of physiology, right? So where we are not going to expand further energy, but we are saving the energy so that we can be more prepared, right? So when we can be more prepared when we are demanded to, when there is a need to, right? So we know that we can quickly recover from the stress. Yeah, this theory says that we can quickly recover from the stress if we have the possibility of distancing from the threat and engage with the visual contents and the scenes that provokes positive emotions, okay, and imaginations that are favorable. And this feature that we're talking about, that the visual contents, the scene that provokes emotional responses, okay, that provokes the imaginable imaginations that are favorable, this is offered by nature, right? So that's why nature is very, very much favorable for us, right? So and we are biologically prepared to respond to this in a very positive way or in a very calming way, right? So the restoration at this level, according to this theory, it is the physiological state where it is characterized by deactivation of physiology, and so that we can mobilize our energy again, right? So these are the two theories that explain, that helps us in understanding the environmental restoration, right? So coming to the third is the restoring our morale, right? So this restoring our morale, this is what psychological intervention do. This is the aim of psychotherapy. This is one of the major aim of psychotherapy, and also all different kinds of psychological intervention, okay? So along with the symptoms, which is very much generic or which is very much original to the illness, right? There is also another problem, that is demoralization. When you have schizophrenia, it is not only the symptoms that you struggle with, not only the symptoms of hallucination, but there are the symptoms that is generated by the symptom, that is demoralization, right? So sometimes our illnesses can be aggravated by, our problem can be aggravated by demoralization, or in some category of the illness, like depression and anxiety, this is an aggravated psychiatric conditions or psychiatric symptoms, okay? So there are definitely, that means it's not only the symptom, the original symptom, we're talking about even demoralization. And this demoralization, it is also another problem where, and this is yes, demoralization is very important factor that needs to be targeted, or that is shaping the influence, shaping the disease, shaping the illnesses, the pattern of the illnesses, okay? So what do we do? I mean, when we say demoralize, it means like the person, or I feel deprived of courage, and even I feel like I've been thrown into confusion, and I feel like I've been thrown into bewilderness, okay? So it is the state of the mind, or it is my state of the mind that, you know, that the state of the mind that I will not be able to cope with the situation. Okay, the state of the mind of my mind that, okay, there is loss of self-confidence. I don't feel competent to cope with the situation. Okay, and feeling of distress, all related to your, all related to one's capacity. This is demoralization, and this is what we're experiencing. This situation, all of us, we are demoralized. Okay, as a person, like for example, you will see that the doctors, the people around us, like they feel demoralized because they are in a certain position, they're in a certain role, and along with them, we also feel demoralized. That means we question our competence. Okay, we feel like we don't know how to cope with this. We don't have the resources to cope with this, right? And this is the area where the previous webinar has also focused, right? For example, like Dr. Garima, she talked about how we can deal about demoralization, how we can feel the lack of efficiency, okay, in this time. Okay, and she has mostly talked from the cognitive behavioral approaches, right? For example, even Ching also, she has targeted how we can boost our morale at this point of time from an insight-oriented approach, right? So the same thing as in when we say the problem is not only with, so the problem is with feeling of isolation and feeling of alienation, right? Because before the alienations and isolations, we have a different way of venting out. We have a sources where we can displace or source where we can project, right? But since we are in a different environment, but now since we are in a more restrictive environment, we no longer have that kind of an access, and we feel like we're being left alone with our own problem, right? So so at this point of time, we are feeling that there's a subjective incompetence, okay? And this subjective incompetence, it is associated with distress. And this distress, we're not able to adequately explain and even alleviate also, right? So that means, but what are we going to do about this? I mean, everyone feels demoralized. Every day, many of us, we feel like, okay, I have been unproductive throughout the day, right? So, and at the end, you evaluate yourself and like, okay, I'm useless. Okay, I mean, and you start missing and you start missing the life before the lockdown, okay, or before this much of restrictions, right? So at this point of time, what we have to do is that we have to look for an alternative, right? So you have to put a stop, as in, okay, how long I'm going to spend myself, how long am I going to put myself in this demoralized state? Okay, so you have to, with certain kind of an insight, you have to say as in, okay, what could be the alternative for this to boost my morale? What could be the alternative for this? This should be our direction where we have to, this should be our direction that we can take steps forward, right? So how can we look forward when we feel that, you know, like, because when we know that this is what we have, functionally, structurally, this is what we are made up of, okay? And this is the kind of the environment that will lead us to this more positive emotions. And what this, and this is the kind of the emotional state we have. We feel demoralized at this state. So where should we be looking forward? Then we should definitely look forward a new experience. We should definitely look forward learning a new experience, right? So to combat this state, we have to learn new habits that will fit in with the picture, that will fit in with the current picture, okay? And that is possible because our brain will allow us, because our brain has the capacity of neuroplasticity. It will definitely allow us. But the difference here is that, yes, since we have to pick up a lot of habits, we need to be forceful to ourselves to some extent, and we need to deliberately change ourselves, deliberately impose learning to ourselves, right? So yes, and learning new habits and habits that is functional in this current state, it will help us to function more adaptive, right? And for example, that if we look back or if we assess this current situation, we are doing well, as in, for example, this examination, the e-learning, okay? Oh, many of us, we are learning many, you know, the functions of many apps. We are, now we are becoming more and more familiar interacting with, yes, interacting through the internet, right? So this is what has happened so far. That means, and the reason behind is that, yes, we all, throughout this time, we have not been incapacitated at many levels also, right? We have been capacitated, but we have been incapacitated also, right? And this is we have to introspect and see what are the things that we have been able to do, and what is the reason why we're able to do, because we are, our brain is allowing us to do that, right? So And if we have this and if we look into this perspective, if we consider this, then we can indulge, or we can pick up habits that will be that will fit into this picture, right? So and another important why the learning can happen at this point of time is that all of us, we are in that state of an emotionally aroused state, right? So our level of arousal is much higher, right? But this level of arousal, many of us, we term it as, okay, irritation, lethargy, okay, restlessness, okay? So this is an emotional arousal. If we put it into a category, this is an emotional arousal. And for a change in the attitude and for a change in the behavior, this emotional arousal is required. If there is no emotional arousal, then there will be no subsequent attitude and behavior change, right? So I can see that in this situation, there are a lot of ingredients which can be very therapeutic for us, which can bring therapeutic changes in us, right? Because it is very much emotionally arousing. And if it is emotional arousing, it supplies motives for us to undertake and to undergo the suffering of, or the challenge of changing our attitude, right? And it will also enhance sensitivity to environmental influences. And very importantly, it will help us to deal with solitude, which we are not very much accustomed to, right? So this is the therapeutic ingredients that we can get from this situation, right? And if we do this, it will be a restorative experience, right? So and if we do this, it will also facilitate, it will also help us to build a personality, okay? We will integrate the new patterns, and also we will somehow break up the old pattern, like the old pattern of always trying to gratify, like always on the treadmill of gratifying, okay? Or the old pattern of highly dependent, right? And also the old pattern of the sense that, highly kind of a self-centered, right? So these experiences, it can turn us towards the environment around us, okay? We can develop this experience can help us to develop a sense of dependency moderately, okay? And also to manage our solitude in an adaptive way, okay? And we can integrate this with our new personality, with the personality that we are in the journey of forming, okay? So unlike human crisis, where we can identify the root cause, or we can identify, even confront the sources of anger and frustration directly. But at this point of time, we are not able to do that. This is a collective consciousness. This is a result of collective consciousness, right? So this webinar is a call for a psychological restoration at many levels of consciousness. It may be an individual and also a collective consciousness, right? So we need to restore our brain capacity. We need to use the advantage of neuroplasticity. We need to develop habits that will reflect that we are dependent upon nature, okay, to increase our morale and reduce sense of demoralization, and building our personality with traits that show dependency and also appreciation of solitude, right? And this webinar is a call for such restoration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much.
This share?
Yeah, you can stop the screen sharing. Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Soshomi. That was really not only informative, that was quite insightful. And also, I think we learned a lot regarding productiveness and restoration also. And it was really nice when you showed us the pictures. And it was insightful in a sense, because it reminded us how important nature is in the restorative power of nature is. And this is actually a very clinical perspective also, and it's quite biopsychology in a way. And I think we all learned a great deal in this essence. Thank you so much, Soshomi, for the talk, for the beautiful talk. And now I think I would like to invite Dr. Ankit Prakash to give a vote of thanks.
Questions?
Thank you, Chen.
Yes, okay, wait. Ankit sir, yeah. Before 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 going to the vote of thanks, there was one question. There is a question to a student sent one question to Soshomi. This is from Sama. She asked, in case of brain restoration, how can we change our habits or rewire the brain? Should I repeat the question?
Yes. No, thank you, Jing. Thank you. I think I've understood the question. Yes.
Okay.
Sama, I'm so glad that you asked this, and you're also a biopsychology student. So this is a question that is very important, right? So we know that there are a lot of cases of the brain injury after the loss of a vision, okay, or after the even the phenomena of a phantom limb. Even without the body, also the person started hallucinating that he has a body, right? Kind of that our brain has, right? So when we talk about rewiring, as in we have certain kind of a connectivity, and this connectivity is responsible for certain behavior, right? For example, the connection, like for example, if you see ice cream, what do? You drool, let's say, okay? So there is a connectivity between these two stimuli and your reaction, right? So since the ice cream is no longer available, what do? That means you have to find an alternative, just like the ice cream. Okay, like for example, maybe you can make a smoothie at your home, right? And developing a liking of the smoothie, okay, and at the same time you are responding with the same you're responding, your brain is responding to it, and then every day you started having this craving, then we can rewire this is a rewiring, right? So you used to have this brain pathway, okay, but now we wanted to override with a new behavior, okay, with a new yes, we wanted to rewire it, right? That means with the what you call it, yes. So by looking at the smoothie, if you respond it, okay, if you responded, and every day you started having smoothie because you gained that kind of a gratification. So if you do that, then it has been rewired. There's connection has been already formed at your brain level, right? So yes, Sama, did I answer your question?
I am sure. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I am sure. Yes, I think I would like to mention one thing that you said during your talk, which was I found it quite beautiful. You mentioned that, yeah, the current crisis is a culmination of bad habits that have been practiced by human. This is actually a very insightful take on what the pandemic that all of us are going through. So, and taking this to what Sama asked, I think we can all, in a way, learn new habits, make a few changes in our life also, and I think it will also help in not only restoring ourselves but restoring the nature as it is. So this was a really, really good session. Thank you so much, Soshomi, and thank you everyone. And now I would like to call Dr. Ankit Prakash to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you again, Cheng. Respected principal, sir, Dwivedi sir, my dear colleagues, and dear students. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks at the end of this webinar. It's a very tough time, we understand that in such adverse situation, keeping our mental health in balance is a tough task. There are so many things which are happening, or we can say which are not happening during this lockdown due to pandemic, which we never assumed or we never expected that things will be happening. And we have so many uncertainties, and because of those uncertainties, we have so much burden, or our mental health is not at that level. So the balance has been modified. So, but we are very lucky to have such good speakers with us who delivered lectures on different aspects or different topics, which help us in dealing with issues, the issues which are very common to us. We all are facing those things. Most of the issues which we are facing, like Dr. Srivastava, she delivered first talk lecture. She highlighted the importance of managing emotions. We understood that it's not only the positive thoughts to which we should pay more attention. It's our negative thoughts also sometimes which keeps our mental health in the balance. She also highlighted the importance of CBT and other things, the morale boosting, as Soshomi said. Thank you, Dr. Garima Srivastava. We are really thankful to you. Our next speaker was Dr. Ching, who delivered lecture on the topic boredom and ourselves amidst the lockdown. During a lecture, we realized that paying importance to ourselves is equally important, and uh, because when we pay our attention to ourselves, that helps us in boosting our morale. So that's really important. We in her lecture we got a chance to observe a meditation technique, which was coupled with the shadow work. It was a very wonderful experience, Dr. Singh. Thank you so much for uh, interacting with that. And today we got chance to listen Dr. Soshomi Makang. She delivered her lecture on the topic psychological restoration. The psychological restoration is also an important thing. We all are facing, as principals are also highlighted this thing that we don't know how to deal with so many things. I know people, those who are working, those who are people like him, those who have started going to the office, or those who have started going, those who have joined the office, for them things are much difficult as it's compared with us. Dr. Soshomi Makang highlighted the psychological restoration on three levels: the brain level, environmental level, and the morale boosting level. Uh, the lecture was wonderful. Dr. Soshomi Makang was really, it was a very nice experience to interact with all of you, to listen to all of you. And concluding my part, once again, I'm thanking all three speakers on behalf of Department of Psychology and college. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is the end of our session. We'll meet you again soon, because in the future we'll be holding some other webinar series also. And thank you so much for attending the session. And with this, I will close the webinar. Thank you all.